Last year, thieves stole goods valued £298,946 in this country. That's more than the total annual output of many a prosperous factory. Sometimes the thieves operate in gangs with elaborate equipment, resources and transport. But this is the more typical operation, the lone housebreaker at work in a temporary vacated home. It's a hazard that every householder faces. Here entry was made conveniently easy for the thief. The window was left open. It would have been a simple task, of course, to force it. But as a rule, thieves don't like the sound of smashing glass. Very often they are willing to withdraw rather than attempt it. Once inside, the thief usually concentrates on small, compact valuables and cash if there's any lying around. But the thief will take anything with a sale value. On Christmas Day, we had the case of a family returning from a drive to find the kitchen sink missing, taps and all, and the washing up hadn't even been done. The thief may just be lucky in finding a house temporarily vacated at this time of the day. More often, though, this is the result of diligent homework on his part, maybe days of continuous observation. In addition to calculating when the house should be empty, the thief also calculates how long it should remain so, just when the housewife will be returning. Leaving the house, even for a brief period, it's important to lock the doors and windows. Now that the damage has been done, this woman is taking the sensible and correct course. She immediately rings up the Gardaí. She's using the emergency 999 number. This, of course, doesn't get her through directly to the Gardaí. It first rings out at the local telephone exchange. She then asks for the emergency service required, in this case the Gardaí. For this housebreaking investigation, there's a three-man team of Gardaí: the local uniformed sergeant, a local plainclothes detective and an expert from the Garda Technical Bureau. The bureau man, as always, has taken along a special investigation kit. The housewife, very properly, has left everything in the ransacked room exactly as she found it, untouched in fact. There was no frantic rush, as often happens, to see what was missing. That's the way the Gardaí like it. Otherwise, any one of a whole variety of clues, maybe the vital clues, might be obliterated. And even such a vague thing as the general overall appearance of the scene can be helpful. The Garda investigators get to work very quickly. For them, this is a familiar scene. They can read the scene instantly and know exactly where to start. Here you see the fingerprint expert setting about his work. Basically, his equipment consists of a special type of powder to develop the finger mark and a light camel hairbrush to work the powder. He also takes along a fixed focus camera for use on special types of surface. When the object examined has a dark surface, a light-colored powder is used, as with this mahogany face drawer. The powder quickly adheres to the finger marks, and it soon becomes obvious to the expert if there's anything worth pursuing. Fingerprints of members of the household are naturally present and also have to be taken for elimination purposes. After locating a worthwhile finger mark, the next move is to transfer it with a lifting tape known as dactyloscopic foil. The print is then placed on a backing surface of contrasting color. In another corner of the room, the local detective has found further clues, including more finger marks. These are of doubtful value. However, after checking them with the aid of the magnifying glass, he decides that they may have possibilities. This time, instead of lifting them with tape, he uses a fixed focus camera. This system is equally good and valid. Meanwhile, the uniformed sergeant is taking full details from the housewife. He wants to know the exact time she left, the time she returned, a minute description of the item stolen, and so on. This kind of questioning can at times prove a little irritating to someone already upset, but it's an essential part of the inquiry. Now the bureau expert has found a mark that's shaping up well. On white-colored phone, so he uses dark-colored powder. There you see it, a sequence of finger marks of a right hand. They obviously contain sufficient details for identification purposes. It could belong to some member of the household or someone with a legitimate access to the phone. Cross-checking revealed that it didn't. So here was the print of the finger of the right hand of the thief. Now all that remains to be done is to find the owner of the fingers. This they hope to do back at the Garda Technical Bureau, central point for checking for the whole country. The Bureau is a rambling old building off St. John's Road, Kilmainham, formerly the Royal Infirmary and once the home of the Chelsea pensioners. Fingerprinting was introduced into this country in 1903. Over 100,000 fingerprints are filed here. They come from the prisons, from Garda stations throughout the country, from other national police forces and from Interpol. Through the type and arrangement of the fingerprint patterns, the collection is broken down into just over 1,000 subdivisions. This gives an excellent system of classification. A permanent staff of experts are employed here keeping this very special type of tab on wrongdoers. It's an unending task. All fingerprints fall into 3 categories. This is the whirl. In the main, the pattern of the ridges here take the form of concentric circles. The arch, the ridges run from one side of the pattern to the other in general shape like arches. The loop, the majority of ridges enter on one side of the pattern, go around the core, recurve and exit on the side of entry. There are infinite variations of these 3 main types. The next task of the men investigating the housebreaking is to compare the marks lifted at the scene against those of known criminals. Their first approach is to pick out the filed prints of a number of likely suspects. From the location of the crime, the time it took place, and the general method of operation, the local detective was able to suggest a short list. In his cross-checking, the expert looks for certain identifying characteristics within the general pattern. These can be ridge endings, ridge bifurcations, lake formations, short independent ridges, or crossovers. In addition, the prints of all fingers have their own indelible characteristics. Depending on the quality of the mark, the search through the files can take anything from 5 minutes to 5 days. If the initial check against the list of suspects proves negative, the search is progressively broadened through other systems, even to the Henry system, which in fact means a search of the entire stock. This, understandably, can take considerable time. This is a close-up picture of the print found on the telephone, the only really useful one found at the scene. To help in the work of cross-checking and later for use in court, the print is photographically enlarged. In this case, it now looks as if the hunch of the local detective has paid off with his short list, and that the housebreaking was the work of one of the regulars operating in the area. The Bureau expert is now confident that he has found sufficient number of characteristics to make an identification. Here we have a comparison chart of the print found at the scene and the one from the files. The chart indicates 12 points of similarity on which the expert based his identification. Some of them are obvious in the picture. Many more points of similarity can be found. The work of searching at the Bureau continues on other cases. This case was comparatively simple. A short list of suspects turned up the culprit. The next step would have been a search through these files, the Glasgow two-handed system. Only after years of training and experience can a man become expert in this specialized field of combating crime. It demands intimate knowledge of thousands of classification combinations. A bit of patience is useful. But the work of fingerprinting is worthwhile. No two fingerprints have ever known to be identical. They may be the same in general pattern, but will differ in some characteristics. They are, therefore, proof positive of identification and are accepted as such by the courts. Identifying the thief usually means more than bringing the criminal to justice. It very often leads to the recovery of the stolen property, and maybe to the solution of other crimes. This journey brings good news to the housewife, and for the sergeant, one of the more pleasant tasks that he has to perform. Of all the property stolen last year, £82,582 worth was recovered. That still left a big percentage with the thieves. This woman was amongst the more fortunate victims of the housebreakers. But relying on the temporary absence of your jewellery is a hazardous business. Better take precautions and make sure that the thief never gets hold of them.